Hey there nation, welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander CheapSkate, and we are back with another episode, the very last episode of Into the Badzones, our little miniature campaign that we were running for our Sector 7 Turf War. This is a mini-campaign that was set up for the 4 bottom-ranking gangs of our campaign, kind of like a little underdog mini-campaign, so that way all 4 gangs can build up more reputation, build up more income for their gangs, and also increase their gang ratings as well. So this is the very last battle report of our limited series. This one is a battle report number 31 of our Necromunda battle reports, and this one is fought between my 2 friends, Fresh Prince Belaire as well as Sergeant Sigmarine. Fresh Prince Belaire is playing the Iron Sights of House Orlock, and Sergeant Sigmarine is playing the Sleeping Dogs of House Delaque. These 2 gangs will be fighting it out in a shootout scenario, so we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what each of the gangs are bringing, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so let's talk about the scenario rules for this one. This one's called the Shootout. Both sides basically start off with D3 plus 1 randomly chosen fighters. In this case, both the Sleeping Dogs as well as the Iron Sights are starting with 4 fighters in this one. And pretty much as you can see in this photo, they pretty much sit up in the massive corridor just heading towards each other. Both groups advance towards each other 3 inches. Each time they do so, they make cool tests. When a gang fails 6 cool tests, we have a little sub phase called the quick draw phase occurs. Fighters make initiative tests using +1 bonuses for their initiative tests with using weapons as sidearms, and -2 for using unwieldy weapons. Fighters go in initiative order and they shoot it out in the quick draw phase, and then once the quick draw ends, normal Necromunda rules apply as always. For the victory conditions, the gang that is the last one standing is the winner for this one. The reward and credits, the winning gang earns D6 times 5 credits for each enemy fighter they take out of action. For experience, each fighter earns 1 point of experience for participating in the battle report, and also +1 experience points for each fighter who didn't fail a single cool test. When it comes to reputation, plus reputation for each gang taking part in the shootout, and for the gang that drew second, the gang earns that many points of reputation equal to the difference between the number of cool tests they failed, as well as 6. And for that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music for the next few turns, so that way you can see exactly how each of the turns progress as the gangs walk towards each other into the quick draw phase. We're going to play some background music real quick, and what you'll notice in the back of each of the different fighters will be yellow dice. That shows how many cool tests they have failed, and once a gang has failed 6 cool tests, we go directly to the quick draw. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll. Alright, so that takes directly to the quick draw. So as you can see here, the yellow dice represent negative values to the initiative tests, while no dice mean that there was no values to the initiative tests, and everything in red, of course, goes into a descending order. So first one's who's shooting first will be the Knight Rider, as well as Mr. Smug. Those guys will be shooting first, followed by Mr. Sinister, then followed by Clunk. After that, Painless Joe will go next afterwards, and then of course the last 3 fighters, No Face, Mudguts, as well as Napalm Ned. Those 3 guys will be shooting it out as well. So now that we have the initiative order, let's go and talk about exactly what happened after they went for their guns and the quick draw occurred. So, mainly after the aftermath of this one, ended up that Painless Joe managed to get hit, but he ended up getting pinned. Same thing with the Knight Rider. However, Clunk, though, he suffers a serious injury, so he goes face down, and he will need to roll up in the next turn during the aim phase to see exactly what happens to him. No Face also goes down as well with a serious injury, also gets a flesh wound on him as well, and that's pretty much about it, leaving Mudguts all by his lonesome to face off the rest of the Delaques of the Sleeping Dogs all by his lonesome. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and both Fresh Prince Bel-Air as well as Sergeant Sigmarine roll off for initiative to see who goes first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 1 for the Orlocks in this photo, and the very first thing that ends up happening is that a memorable death takes place. What ends up happening is that my friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air gets to go first. The Knight Rider spends a basic action to get back on his feet again, and he also group activates. He activates No Face, he also activates Mudguts as well. Mudguts actually charges directly in Napalm Ned and engage in close combat, and unfortunately for my friend Sergeant Sigmarine, Napalm Ned just basically dies a memorable death. What ends up happening is the close combat phase, Mudguts took his maul and basically just stoved it in his head and killed him right off the bat. So because of that, he is eliminated from the roster, and at the same time earning a bonus experience point from Mudguts. At the same time, the Knight Rider, when he gets back on his feet, he opens up with his auto pistol, but unfortunately for him, though, he misses his shots, so not much comes from there. However, No Face gets activated next, and so he pops up with his flamer, takes aim with that flamer, and opens up directly onto the 3 members of the Sleeping Dogs, hitting Mr. Sinister, Mr. Smug, as well as Painless Joe, and a sheet of fiery promethium. However, the effects were kind of lackluster in the end. Mr. Sinister did suffer a wound, and he also gets pinned from that as well. Painless Joe is perfectly fine, Painless Joe is also perfectly fine as well, and same thing with Mr. Smug. Now, Mudguts, of course, does finish off Napalm Ned, so because it does a 2-inch follow through, and so because of that, Mr. Smug as well as Mudguts will be engaged in close combat in the next turn. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 2 for the Delaques. They managed to get the initiative next on this one, and this photo is taken after the action phase. And as you can see in this one, all kinds of bad things just ended up happening for this one. What ended up happening is that my friend Sergeant Sigmarine activated his gang leader, which is Mr. Sinister. And Mr. Sinister has the Overseer ability, and he puts both of his double actions to use the Overseer ability onto Painless Joe. What that does, that actually gives Painless Joe 2 different activations, in which case he opens up with his plasma gun directly into the 3 remaining members of the Iron Sights. He managed to put serious injuries on both No Face as well as onto the Knight Rider, and to make matters worse, both those guys go out of action without cold results. So because of that, they immediately go out of action, and they go directly into recovery. He also managed to put a flesh wound directly onto Clunk at the same time. And with his second activation, Painless Joe then opens up again onto Clunk as well, managed to put an eye injury on that poor guy, putting him out of action with a eye injury lasting an injury. So because of that, he suffers a -1 to his ballistic skill for the rest of the campaign. And finally, Mr. Smug actually managed to put a double 6 out of action result onto Mudguts. Because that Mudguts suffers a memorable death as well, he gets eliminated from his gang's roster as well, and Mr. Smug also burns another additional bonus point for experience for actually killing a member of the rival gang as well. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, that takes directly into the battle report, with the Delaques winning for this one, and the Sleeping Dogs march off victoriously in the very last battle of our Into the Badzones mini-campaign. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go directly to the after-action report and talk about the post-game, because this battle report is now officially over. Alright, so now we go directly to the post-game. We start off with the Iron Sights of House Orlock. For the injuries, both the Knight Rider as well as No Face suffered out cold results, while Clunk suffered an eye injury, losing 1 to his ballistic skill, so now his ballistic skill is 6 up. And Mudguts, however, died from a memorable death, so he gets eliminated from the roster altogether. For advancements, none of the members of the Iron Sights actually advanced this turn, so because that, we go directly to the territories. From their settlement, they earn +1 reputation as well as 40 credits, and they also recruited a new ganger whose name was Durango. My friend Fresh Prince Bel-Air actually rolled double 6s to see if they recruit anybody from their settlement. At the same time, they also earned 1 point of reputation from their drinking hole. During the merchant and trading aspect of the post-game, they earned 40 credits from their settlement as well as 45 credits from their stash. And because this is the very last battle report for the Iron Sights before they move on to the down phase of the campaign, they also earned 250 credits for the down phase, bringing their grand total to 335 credits in total. With those 335 credits, they purchased a shotgun with solid and scattered rounds, a stub gun with dum-dum bullets, as well as a maul for Durango, the newly hired ganger, and they also hired an Orlock lugger cargo servitor, so they hired a brute for their gang as well. His name is Dr. Dealgood. They equipped him with a heavy stubber as well as monosight and heavy carapace armor. For the reputation, they earn 2 points reputation from their territories as well as 3 point reputation from the scenario, bringing their grand total to 24 reputation points. Their new record now is at 2 wins as well as 6 losses, and their new gang rating now is at 1,895 points. And finally, we have the Sleeping Dogs. For the injuries, the only injury they suffered was Napalm Ned. He suffered a memorable death, so because of that, he gets eliminated off the gang roster entirely. There were no advances at this time for the Sleeping Dogs, so because of that, we skip that part and we go directly to their territories. From their settlement, the Sleeping Dogs earn 1 point reputation as well as 40 credits, and from their Narco Den, they earn 25 credits from that as well. In the merchant phase, as well as the trading aspect of it, they got 75 credits from the scenario, 65 credits from their territories, as well as an additional 250 credits for the down phase, because now that this gang is done with their mini-campaign, they're now entering the down phase of the Sector 7 Turf War, bringing their grand total of credits to 390 credits in total. With that 390 credits, they hired a new ganger named Flamer Fred, and they equipped him with a flamer as well as a last pistol, and they also recruited a Delaque Spiker named Drix the Maw. So because of that, they've also hired a brute for themselves as well, and they hired themselves a very powerful psyker that they'll use for the next scenarios when we get into our campaign as well. For the reputation, they do earn 1 point reputation for their territories as well as 1 point reputation from the scenario, bringing their grand total reputation to 13 points. Their new record now is at 3 wins as well as 5 losses, and their new rating now is at 1,791 points. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings about the conclusion to the Into the Badzones mini-campaign that we ran for our Sector 7 Turf War. All 4 lowest ranking members of our gangs have now completed fighting against each other for a little mini-campaign, and now it's time for them to join the rest of their brothers and sisters in the Sector 7 Turf War, which will be starting, of course, next week. We're starting off with round number 6 of that campaign. So that's going to do it for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is invaluable to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news on this channel. That's going to do it for this one, you guys. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.